All right. Welcome, everyone, to today's Google Search Central SEO Office Hours Hangout. My name is John Mueller. I'm a search advocate here on the search relations team, Google in Switzerland. And part of what we do are these office hour sessions where people can join in and ask their question around their website in search. We have a bunch of questions on YouTube, which we can go through. But we also have a bunch of people already raising their hands to jump and ask the first question. So maybe we'll just go through some of the live questions first. Let's see. I think, Akash, you're first in the list.
Hi, John.
Hi.
Uh, my question is related to few of the industry, let's say stock industry and the mutual fund industries. So we have like titles and meta description and header tags. So we have added the value of the stocks, right? Let's say today that stock price could be $20, tomorrow it could be 30, and next day it could be. So that title or the value, just the particular the number, it keeps on changing every single day. So just like you have like $20 or 30 or could be anything. So just by changing the titles every single day or the header tags or the meta description, the values within it, does it have a significant ranking effects? Because I've heard saying that your URL should be clean and it should be there for the longer duration to get the value. Does the same applies for the titles, metas, and the headers, or could be any other factors?
Yeah. So I guess the question is does it make sense to change titles frequently, roughly?
Yeah, but not too much. It's only the value that keep on just changing every single day. So let's say today's Google stock price is like $20. So this is my title for today. However, for the next day, it would be like today's Google share price is like $25. So only the number is changing. However, I look at it as the whole title is changing. So does it
OK.
make any significant difference?
I think that's fine. I mean, it's something where we wouldn't give it any special weight if your title tag keeps changing. But if you want to update your titles regularly, that's totally up to you. The difficulty, I suspect, is more that if you change your titles on a daily basis, we might not recrawl that page on a daily basis. So it might be that you change it every day, but in the search results, the title that we show is a few days old, just because that's the last version that we picked up from that page. But that's more of, I'd say, like a practical effect rather than a strategic effect.
So is it like having a date function at the backend and on the content, like last modified date on your particular page? Does it make helps Google to index that page much faster, like something like that?
I mean, it helps us to recognize when something has changed, but it's not necessarily going to happen that we'll say, oh, we've seen this page change every day, therefore we'll recrawl it every day. It might be that we recrawl it every day. It might be that we recrawl it every week or every month. So it's not that the changes that you make with the titles would affect how quickly we recrawl.
Okay. Well, one more question, sir.
Sure.
Yeah. Actually, I was having a particular domain. Okay, so it's for one of my clients. So that was a travel domain, the name itself, right? But they were into business for travel business, let's say 10 to 15 years. And however, they have stopped working on that particular domain and then restarted that particular domain for an e-commerce website. So the domain remains same. However, just the business model has been changed from travel to e-commerce. So we have so when we started again for adding the Google Search Console, we got like more than lakhs and lakhs of links in the section of the Google Search Console. However, there were some penalties as well, which were pounded to it. And does how much time like Google usually take to understand there's a change of business for this particular domain? Earlier they were like in travel. We have done a lot of PR, a lot of like marketing वगैरह like for all this particular domain. However, thus these things can help, because it's been published by so many bloggers, authors, or news websites. So this particular thing has been changed. On our own website also, we did write some content related to this. However, my main question is like, how much time does Google take to understand that this particular domain was for X business, but now they have shifted to X, Y business? Like,
I don't think there's any particular time. So that's something that it essentially organically happens over time. If you reuse an existing domain and you put something else on it, then over time we'll learn that it's a new website and we'll treat it accordingly. But there is no specific time frame for that. So from that point of view, I don't have any date or any kind of duration that you need to watch out for.
it's been a year, sir.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it sounds like you're doing the right things. So from that point of view, I don't see anything kind of problematic that you have to do differently. I guess the two aspects I would watch out for are if the previous website was involved with a lot of shady practices, especially around external links, then that might be something that you want to clean up. And the other aspect is if there's any web spam manual action, then obviously that's something that you'd want to clean up so that you can kind of start from a clean state. It's never going to be completely clean if something else was already hosted on the website before, but at least you're kind of in a reasonable stage, and you don't have to kind of drag that baggage along.
so so is it more like to disallow all those backlinks which we are getting for the travel business kind of thing from many countries? So does that mean that we should disallow all those links from different countries for the travel significant, and then only focus for the commerce one, or doing a lot of PR and all such activities, and getting uh, the news part for our e-commerce business? Is it like,
I you don't need to disallow or disavow the links that are related to the other business, but if there are problematic links related to the previous business, then that's something that you want to disavow. So if, I don't know, the previous business bought a lot of links or did a lot of weird things with regards to links, then that's something you want to clean up. And that's something you'd want to clean up regardless if it's a previous business or just your previous SEO that was working on it. So that's kind of the direction I would head. Just because it's a different topic or maybe from a different country, that's not a reason to disavow a link. I don't think that's problematic.
sure? Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Uh, John, I have a follow-up on the same.
OK.
If so, does it make also any sense if for links, I understand you told that you should get the links updated if there is any problem. But for content, suppose earlier it was travel domain, so all the content was about travel. So site owner, if he moves to e-commerce, should he also approach the old website owners where they have published travel content about travel, and should he ask that kindly remove travel related content and
No, I don't think that's. I mean, like you can, but I don't really think that's necessary because websites evolve over time, and what worked as a link in the past might not work as a link in the future. It's not that this will cause you any problems if someone wrote about kind of like
Mhm.
what the previous owner of a domain did.
So I was only thinking that if, as you told, that it may take time to understand the new business of the domain name. So I was thinking if removing old content may expedite Google to understand that now this is not travel anymore.
I I doubt you would have to go that far. Yeah, I
Okay.
don't think so. Yeah.
Okay, John. Thank you.
Sure. OK, and next up, I can't read your name. I'm sorry.
Hi, John.
No, I think, I don't know. I think you might be muted.
Hi, John.
He's a Korean, I think.
Yes, yes. The person with the mask.
He's talking about
Oh, I think you're still muted. Sorry.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
I'm sorry. Okay, that's Korean. I have a question about relationship between failure from robot.txt and server and connectivity failure and search traffic from Google, because I saw more than 5% of robot.txt and server connectivity failure recently in Search Console. So we had 7 days failures in November, and it happened once in December. So our server team blocked some IP addresses from Googlebot. Since November, our website traffic from Google has dropped about 20%. So if nothing changed during the date, is it reasonable if I blame the server team for the decrease of the traffic? I'm just wondering. So how much effect on the problems will be, from the robot and server connectivity to Google search engine traffic?
Is the problem fixed now, or?
They kind of opened the IP address, but we had one more problem in December, and they don't know what is the reason, because they all opened their IP address and they don't know what is the reason from the
Yeah.
Google Search Console.
So I think there are two things maybe to watch out for. On the one hand, if you have server connectivity issues, we would not see that as a quality problem. So it wouldn't be that the ranking for your pages would drop. So I think maybe that's the first step. So if you see that the ranking of your pages is dropping, then that would not be from the technical issue. On the other hand, what does happen with these kind of server connectivity problems is that if we can't reach your robot's text file for a while, then we will assume that we can't crawl anything on the website. And that can result in some of the pages from your website being dropped from our index. So that's kind of a simple way to figure out, is it from a technical problem or not? Are the pages gone from the index? And if so, that's probably from a technical problem. Or are the pages just ranking lower? Then that's not necessarily from a technical problem. And if it is from a technical problem, like if these pages are gone, then usually we will retry those missing pages after a couple of days maybe, and we will try to index them again. So if the issue was in November and you fixed it in November, then I assume you should not see any effects from that anymore, just because we should have re-indexed those pages in the meantime. If you do still see that we're not indexing the pages properly from your website, I would double check the crawl error section in Search Console to see if there is still perhaps a technical issue where sometimes maybe Googlebot is blocked.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Sure. All right. I'm Mayor SEO.
I'm also muted. Okay, now. Hi, how are you?
Oh, very, very hard to hear you.
Just a second. Maybe I should change the microphone. Is it better now?
Very faint.
Like this? Like this?
It's getting better. OK. We'll try.
Okay, so I have small questions. First, should the title be with the company name, like we are in a news industry? And should we add like to each title the company name, like we are like test the news or dash news? This is the first. You can answer it if you can, if it's small, yes or no, I think.
I think it makes sense. So when we show a title link for a website, if it's for a kind of a lower level page, we'll try to show the name of the website as well in the title that we show. So if you add it yourself, then you kind of like already include that information. So
Okay,
I think it's a
so I
good
think it's
practice.
yes. Okay.
Yes.
The second thing, some of our competitors is like copying the article and paste it again on their website, but they rewrite the main header or the title inside the article, so they are showing before us in the search results. Is it a good practice to do that, like rewrite the title, the header title inside the article, or the main title inside the article?
I don't know. I mean, if they're copying your content, then I don't think that's a good practice. So from that point of view, I don't think just rewriting the headline would make it a good article. If they're really copying your full content, I might also look into the DMCA process to see if that applies there.
Actually, I applied 3 or 4 copywriter removal, and they removed and Google removed their articles. But for the first 2 or 3 days, they are showing up before us in our article, like they are, because they are rewriting. So I thought, should we do that? So I think it's a no. We shouldn't do
No.
that. Okay.
I mean, you can change the headlines of your articles anytime. Like that's up to you. But I don't think you would see an advantage of changing the headlines just purely from changing the headlines.
Okay, we have a comment section under the article, but it's not showing in Google. Like if I searched for a comment, like someone is typed a comment and I search for it, I don't find it. Like the article is not showing there. Is there any good or best practice for the comment section I should do? So can Google like see more our comments? Because comments is like discussion about the news it's happening.
Yeah.
Is what the good practice of this?
It's up to you. Like you can decide if you want to have that shown or not, but it's essentially a technical element on the page. So it's not that there's a setting in Search Console to turn it on or off. It's basically there are different ways of integrating comments on web pages, and some of those ways are blocked from indexing, and some of those ways are easy to index. So if you want to have your comments indexed, then make sure that you kind of implement them in a way that is easy to index. And the inspect URL tool in Search Console will show you a little bit what we find on the page. So you can test to see, can Google index the comments? But it sounds like even when you search in Google directly, you already see that we can't index them. So
yes, so there's some problem, I think, in structure.
yeah.
Okay, should we add the title in the not the title, the dates in the title? Like we have some prices of currency. So our currency today is like all the currencies for today. Should we add the title, or should we add the date inside the title? Is it a
If you
good
want to.
practice or no?
I
It's
don't
not
think I
affecting.
don't think it changes anything. So for news articles, I do think it makes sense to include the date in various places on the page, and that can include the title. Just because with news articles, we try to understand what the primary date is of the page, and we do that by looking at like all of the mentions and things that you have on the page. And if we can confirm that date with these mentions on the page, then it's easier for us to pick that up. But I think for a page that is changing constantly, like currency prices, like you mentioned, or previously stock prices, I don't think it's critical to have the date in the title.
We are creating each day a new article with a different. That's why I said maybe we should list the dates or not. Each day there is a new article, not changing the main article,
Yeah.
like a static page.
I suspect that will make it really hard for us to crawl and index your website. So that's kind of the other aspect there. If you're automatically generating these pages on a daily basis for all of the
No,
currencies,
not automatically, manually actually. And we are
Okay.
writing because the dollar rise because of 1, 2, 3. The dollars
okay.
go
Okay.
because
Yeah. Okay. I mean, from my point of view, then those would be normal news articles. So if you want to include the date in places like that, I think that's perfectly fine. I don't think you would get any magical SEO bonus from adding the date, but it's okay. Sure.
Okay. Last one. Should we add like our URL now is like website slash news slash ID of the news? Should we add the category like maybe USA or Arab states or something slash then the news? Is it like affecting the category of the news inside the URL?
I don't think you would notice any visible change there. I think
Mm.
for tracking purposes, sometimes it makes it easier because then you can look at analytics and say, oh, this category is very popular, or this category is not working so well. But
Mm.
from an SEO point of view, I don't think there would be any noticeable difference.
Mm. Thank you very much.
Sure. All right, Saidul.
Hi, John.
Hi.
I had a few questions about Google crawling and indexing. So recently, we are facing some issue for some of our client website. So we are writing content and posting content on their blog. What happens last 4 months? We are posting content on the website, but most of the content are not getting indexed by Google. And when we inspect URL, we usually get two messages. One is the URL is crawled but not indexed yet, or URL is discovered but not indexed yet. So my first question is about if it say URL is crawled but not indexed, does it mean Google thinks this content is not perfect for indexing, or what does that mean?
I don't think it means anything in particular. So I think that's always kind of an easy early assumption to say, oh, Google looked at it but decided not to index it. Most of the time, like when we still crawl something, it doesn't necessarily mean that we'll automatically index it. So I would almost treat those two category of kind of not indexed as a similar thing. And it's tricky because we don't index everything. So that can happen. If you think this is a good website where we should be indexing more, I would love to have some example URLs so that we can pass that on to the team. And if you want to drop some in the chat, that would be super useful.
Okay. And the next one is in this scenario, if we like, it is not only for one client, we are facing this for multiple clients, 5 or 6 clients at the same moment. So is there any other way, like we are trying to inspect the URL, then requesting for indexing, we are trying to use Google Search Console. Is there any other way to make it faster, or is there any other things if we do this, maybe that will help for getting indexed?
I mean, there are different things which perhaps you're already doing. On the one hand, kind of making sure that it's easy for us to recognize the important content on a website is really good, which means sometimes means making less content and making better content. So having fewer pages that you want to have indexed. The other thing is internal linking is very important for us to understand what you would consider to be important on a website. So things, for example, that are linked from the home page are usually a sign that like you care about these pages, so maybe we should care about them more. Things with external links, they also kind of go into that category of where we see other people think that these pages are important, then maybe we'll see them as important too. And then sitemaps and RSS feeds from a technical point of view also help us a little bit better to understand, like, these pages are new or they have changed recently. We should check them out again and see what is there. But all of these things kind of come together, and it's something where it's rarely that there's like one trick that you're missing to get these pages indexed.
Okay. And the last question. So what happens when we saw that those articles are not getting indexed? So we told our client to share those articles on their social media account like Facebook or Twitter, Instagram. And those actually help us to draw some link from some other website to those blog posts. Now, we are using those blog posts for interlinking as well to other pages. So getting linked to those blog posts which are not indexed by Google, will have any impact on the website ranking or will add any value from SEO point of view?
I mean, if we find external links to those pages, then chances are we might crawl and index that page. It's like a little bit higher, I guess. It depends a little bit on what kind of external links, of course. They're like links from social media directly usually have no follow attached, so we don't really forward any signals there. And if it's something where we can recognize, well, these are maybe problematic links or not that useful links, maybe we will ignore those too. But obviously, if we can tell that kind of something is seen as being important, we'll probably go off and crawl and index that page more likely. What you generally won't see is that we will kind of like forward value to the rest of the website if we don't actually index that page. Because if we decide not to index that page, then it's still that situation that, well, we don't have a destination for those links, so we can't do anything with those links for the rest of the website.
Thank you, John.
Sure. All right, Meet.
Yeah, hi John.
Hi.
So our website is like based out of India mainly, and like our users are also from India. So like a few days back, what we did was we moved all our dynamic traffic behind a CDN. But what we have been observing is that like in the search console under crawl stats, our response times have gone up from like 300 milliseconds to like around a second. So like we are not understanding, and also the crawl rate has dropped. It dropped from around 2 million requests a day to around 80K requests a day. So like we are not understanding, does like moving to a CDN impact how Google crawls our website? And like could the network latency that is introduced due to the CDN servers being present close to from where Google is crawling our site, like does that impact how the crawl rate as well as like our search ranking as well? So, and also yeah, so Prateek from my team is also there if he wants to add something.
Yeah, so from a ranking point of view, this would not change anything. So maybe that's kind of the first question ahead. But it can, like if you change your hosting significantly, what will happen on our side is the crawling rate will move into a more conservative area first, where we'll say we'll crawl a little bit less first because we saw a bigger change in hosting, which could be a move to a CDN or a move from a CDN or from one CDN to a different CDN. And then over time, over, I don't know, a couple of weeks, maybe a month or so, we will increase the crawl rate again to kind of see where we think it will settle down. So essentially, that drop in crawl rate overall for move to a CDN or change of a CDN, that can be normal. The crawl rate itself doesn't necessarily mean that there's a problem. Because like if we were crawling 2 million pages of your website before, it's unlikely, I assume, that you would have 2 million pages that change every day. So it's not necessarily the case that we would miss all of the new content on your website. We would just try to prioritize again and figure out which of these pages we actually need to recrawl on a day-to-day basis. So just because the crawl rate drops is not necessarily a sign for concern. What would worry me more is the change in the average response time. Because the crawl rate that we choose is based on the average response time. It's also based on server errors, those kind of things. And if the average response time goes up significantly, we will kind of stick to a lower crawl rate. So that's something where I assume if the average is around 1 second per URL on your website, I feel that's quite.
So actually about that, the average response time has actually improved for our users. It has only increased for the Google crawler. So
yeah.
Like
Yeah,
how
I mean,
we are not able to explain that actually. So
yeah, I don't know. It depends on how you have your CDN set up. So that's, I think, always a tricky part if you focus kind of your website on users in one country, and Googlebot's crawling usually happens from the US, and you don't kind of see what users in the US would see, then that's sometimes a little bit tricky to diagnose and to figure out what exactly is causing that delay. But that, from our point of view, the response time is critical for the amount of crawls that we do per day, because we want to limit the number of active connections that we have to your server. And if the response time is high, then like we run into that limit fairly quickly. Whereas if we can crawl quickly, then we don't have that much of a problem with the number of concurrent connections.
We tried running tests like from US locations, like with CDN and without CDN, the latencies that we are observing are same. So is there anything else that we can look into, like why this should be happening?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I would use maybe some testing tools that are running within Google's network. So if for example you have something, I don't know, if you can set up a VM on Google Cloud, for example, and use that to test the latency to your server, that might be an approach that you could take. What you could also do is look at your server logs to see which URLs Googlebot is explicitly requesting, and check to see if there's a general pattern there. So in particular, it might be happening that Googlebot is crawling a lot of URLs that take a lot of resources on your side, and which are not representative of the rest of your website. And because of that, it might be that the URLs that Googlebot is requesting, they take a lot of time. And maybe there are ways for you to either optimize those URLs or make it so that Googlebot finds fewer of those URLs, or maybe even block them completely if they're not useful for your website.
John, Pratik here, Sam with me. What we observed was the time it took for a request to be served from US, right? That did not change at all before or after we moved our URLs over there. So could it be that previously our origin servers were directly requested by Google and they were in India, and Google is considering the network latency over there to be very high, so it is reducing that network latency and showing a reduced response time in the crawl rate. And for the CDA in our servers, the site would be served from US location, as the CDN servers would also be present in US. So for Google, probably the server is now present in US instead of India, and it is not reducing that network latency as such.
That shouldn't be the case, no.
Okay.
We really use the actual latency that we see, not anything where we say, oh, it might be like this. Because the report there is less about usability for users and really more about kind of the practical crawling from Google's side. So that's something where we really report exactly what we saw. And like I said, what might be happening is that there's something along the chain of that request that is slowing things down. It might also be that the kind of on average, the requests that Googlebot makes are just slower because of the URLs that are accessed. So I've seen this, for example, when a website has a lot of very large PDF files, then obviously, per request, the amount of bytes that need to be transferred is very high. But that doesn't mean that kind of on average, when you look at other URLs, that it's a very long time. But it's kind of that large number due to the size of the bytes that is kind of pulling things down. It can also be that, for example, we crawl a lot of search pages, and maybe the search functionality on your site goes directly to the origin servers and takes a long time to be processed. Then again, it could look like the average response time is quite high. So I I would try to look into the details there. Another thing is perhaps something around the lines of your DNS connection or anything in the line of the connection there that might be slower for Googlebot to process.
Okay. And one last question. The increase in latency for the crawler, would it affect the rankings?
No. No.
Okay, so we are seeing a constant drop over there since we moved. So that was one question that we had in mind.
Yeah, that would not be affecting the ranking. So the technical side of things is really purely about getting all of your pages as quickly as possible, getting the new pages indexed. And if we aren't able to crawl as much, we'll try to prioritize more. But that wouldn't be affecting the rankings.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks a lot.
Sure. OK, let me go through some of the submitted questions so that we don't lose track of them completely. And I'll go through more of the live questions as well afterward. Don't worry. I think the first one was the CDN question, which we just had. The next one I have is we've undertaken a substantial code change of our website to JavaScript with server-side rendering to static HTML. It's been 4 months, and our search rankings are not recovering after a drop. We're also noticing strange activity in the search results with vastly inconsistent rankings between target keyword and subtle variations. It feels like Google is struggling to understand the broader context of the content, which has not changed after the upgrade. Are you able to shed any light on why this is occurring? It's really hard to say without seeing the website itself. But essentially, if nothing on the website has changed, if you just move from client-side rendering to server-side rendering, then I would not expect to see any change in rankings or visibility on the website. So I would assume they're either one of two things are happening. On the one hand, it might be that with the change of your infrastructure, your website layout and structure has changed as well. So that could include things like internal linking, maybe even the URLs that are findable on the website. And those kind of things, they can affect ranking. The other thing could be that maybe there were just changes in ranking overall that were happening, and they just happened to coincide with when you made the technical changes on your website. And that's something where I think you can kind of try to figure out if that might be happening by really comparing your previous website to your current website to figure out were there really significant structural changes or not. If there are no structural changes and you're seeing a change in rankings, then I would assume this is more of a general ranking change rather than something specific to this infrastructure change that you made. Within some industries, would it be unfair for Google Shopping ads to run alongside the ads displayed on the top of the search as it pushes organic search results in smaller organizations further and further down the page? Do smaller organizations have a chance in competing with larger companies? I don't know. I think this is almost like a philosophical question. From our point of view, it's definitely not the case that we're trying to kind of like focus on big websites or anything like that. But from a purely a practical point of view, obviously, if you're a small company and you're trying to compete with larger companies, then it's always going to be hard. And especially on the web, one of the things that I've noticed over time is that in the beginning, a lot of large companies were essentially incompetent with regards to the web, and they made terrible websites, and their visibility in the search results was really bad. And it was easy for small websites to get in and kind of like say, well, I was like, here's my small website or my small bookstore, and suddenly your content is visible to a large amount of users. And you can kind of have that success moment early on. But over time, as large companies also see the value of search and of the web overall, they've kind of grown their websites. They have really competent teams. They work really hard on making a fantastic web experience. And that kind of means for smaller companies that it's a lot harder to kind of gain a foothold there, especially if there's a very competitive existing market out there. And it's less about large companies or small companies. It's really more about kind of the competitive environment in general. And that's something where you kind of as a small company, you should probably focus more on your strengths and the weaknesses of the competitors and try to find an angle where you can shine, where other people kind of don't have the ability to shine as well, which could be specific kinds of content or specific audiences or anything along those lines, kind of like how you would do that with a normal physical business as well. If an href tag contains both a text and an image, which one helps Google to better understand what the link page is about, the alt text of the image or the visible anchor text? Does the order in which they occur within the tag also play a role? With regards to an image itself, we would probably not find a lot of value in that as an anchor text. If you have an alt text associated with the image, then we would treat that essentially the same as any anchor text that you have associated with the link directly. So from our point of view, the alt text would essentially be converted into a text on the page and be treated in the same way. So it's not that one or the other would have more value or not. They're essentially equivalent from our side. And the order doesn't matter as much. I don't think it matters at all. It's essentially just both on the page. However, one thing I would not do is purely for usability reasons, just say, oh, well, if the visible text doesn't matter as much or is the same as an alt text, I'll just remove the visible text. Because especially other search engines might not see it that way. And it might also be for accessibility reasons that it actually makes sense to have a visible text as well. So I wouldn't just like blindly remove it to a minimum, but rather kind of at least know that you're not losing anything by having both of those there. We're relaunching a customer website and moving it from domain A to domain B. We're reconfiguring redirects from domain A to domain B. The question now is whether the page authority and page ranking will be negatively affected if there are many backlinks to domain A. And also future backlinks, which will point back to domain A. Is the domain authority from the old domain automatically inherited by the new domain, even if there are lots of links? I think there are two aspects here. On the one hand, if you're moving from one website to another and you use the redirects kind of to move things over, and you use the various tools that we have, like the change of address tool in Search Console, then that helps us to really understand everything from the old domain should just be forwarded to the new one. So that's kind of essentially a situation where, as much as possible, we'll take everything from the old domain, just apply it to the new one. The other aspect there is on a per-page basis. We also try to look at canonicalization. And for canonicalization, we look at a number of different factors that come in. On the one hand, redirects play a role. Things like internal linking play a role. The rel canonical on the pages play a role. But external links also play a role. So what could happen in kind of probably more edge cases, I guess, is that if we see a lot of external links going to the old URL and maybe even some internal links going to the old URL, that we actually index the old URL instead of the new one, because from our point of view, it starts to look like, well, actually, the old URL is the right one to show, and the new one is maybe more of a temporary thing. And because of this, what we recommend when you do a migration from one domain to another is not only set up the redirect and not only use the change of address tool, but also go off and try to find the larger websites that were linking to your previous domain and see if they can update those links to your new domain. Kind of just making sure that everything that you do is aligned with making sure that we can focus on the new domain rather than on the old one. We are having a problem with e-commerce facets, filters that are getting indexed even though they're blocked by robots text and have a canonical tag that point. Is there a point in adding no index tags too? So probably not. The short answer, I guess, is if the URL is blocked by robots text, we don't see any of those meta tags on the page. We don't see the rel canonical on the page because we don't crawl that page at all. So if you want us to kind of take into account the rel canonical or take into account a no index that you put on a page, you need to make sure that we can't, or that we can crawl the actual page itself. The other aspect here is that oftentimes these pages may get indexed if they're blocked by robots text, but they're indexed without any of the content because we can't crawl it. And usually that means that these pages don't show up in the search results anyway. So if someone is searching for some kind of product that you sell on your website, then we're not going to kind of dig and see if there's also a page that is blocked by robots text, which would be relevant, because we already have really good pages from your website that we can crawl and index normally and that we can show. On the other hand, if you do a site query for that specific URL, then maybe you'll still see that URL in the search results without any content. So a lot of times, what I notice is that this is more of a theoretical problem than a practical problem, in that theoretically, these URLs can get indexed without content, but in practice, they're not going to cause any problems in search. And if you do see them showing up for practical queries on your website, then most of the time, that's more a sign that, well, the rest of your website is really hard to understand. So if someone searches for one of your product types, and we show one of these roboted kind of category or facet pages, then from my point of view, that would be a sign that, well, actually, the visible content on your website is not sufficient for us to understand that the normal pages that you could have indexed are actually relevant here. So that would be kind of my first step there, is to try to figure out, do normal users see these pages when they search normally? And if they don't see them, then that's fine. You can just ignore them. If they do see these pages when they search normally, then that's a sign that maybe you should be focusing on other things on the rest of your website. Then a quick question about the Google Favicon user agent. Does it only crawl the home page? How does it respond if the home page redirects to a subfolder within the same domain? Will it still download the Favicon from the subfolder? Yes, it should. So the Favicon that we pull should, I believe we only do that kind of one favicon per domain. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's the case. But if you redirect your homepage, or if you redirect the favicon file to a different part of your website, we should be able to still pick that up. Because practically what would happen here is we would follow that redirect, but we would probably still index it as your homepage anyway. So from a practical point of view, if you search for your name, probably we would show the root URL, even though it redirects to a lower level page. Wow, lots of questions left, but also a bunch of hands. Maybe I'll just go through some of the folks with the raised hands. And I have some more time afterwards as well, so we can go through more questions too. Let's see, Yogesh.
Hey, hi, John.
Hi.
The question is regarding the sitemaps, and I'm working on the project of like e-commerce. So it has a huge number of URLs, like let's say lakhs of URLs. So we have like segmented. So with compression, with sitemaps of sitemaps. So from past month, I'm seeing that Search Console is not able to fetch it. But the twist is the main sitemap, the root sitemap is able to index, and it's showing status success. But the nested sitemap 1, 2, 3, that is showing couldn't fetch. And the discovered URL is 0. And I tried doing inspect of each sitemap. They were showing the fetch is successful. So just want your inputs on that. So what will be the scenario in this case?
I don't know. It's hard to say. So I think one of the things I've heard, I haven't actually looked at it in details, is in Search Console, if you have an index sitemap, which is kind of that sitemap of sitemap thing that you said, then we don't show the details of the detail pages directly in Search Console. So essentially, to get at that information, you might need to submit the individual sitemaps individually, just so that you can look up the reports for that. That probably is something that you don't need to do for all of these, and just maybe pick a sample of them and see how that's going there. The other thing is that what might help here is to just change the URL of some of these detailed sitemaps and see if that works. Because it might end up that we try to recrawl some of these sitemaps, and for whatever reason we think we can't do it, and we kind of remember that that state. So if you use a new URL for the sitemap file, maybe it'll help us to understand, oh, we should double check the sitemap again, and that might help us to kind of reprocess those. So I would try that for maybe a handful of them first, and if you see that it works, then maybe it makes sense to change the naming convention that you have. I can't promise that it'll kind of result in all of these sitemaps being crawled and indexed, because we do sometimes just not crawl individual sitemap files where we think, oh, we're not sure what the actual value is of crawling and indexing the rest of the content there.
So two things comes in my mind. So one thing is like, it's 1 month before everything was working properly, so that sitemap was able to crawl, and the nested sitemaps were also working properly. And if, let's say, I'm testing for one batch of sitemap and checking how it is work, but if I change that to, let's say, one sitemap, I'm changing to the next folder and testing out, isn't it the same data is already there with the Google, and just the same iteration I'm resubmitting and creating confusion?
How do you mean?
Means, let's say sitemap 1 and sitemap 2, sitemap 3 is already there in the sitemap index file. And then I'm just creating a, let's say, xyz.com/sitemap1 and trying to test. But in that sitemap 1, it's already like 20,000 URLs are there. If I'm testing out, that already that data is available with the Google.
Yeah.
The previous sitemap.
I haven't actually tested it in Search Console, or at least not recently. But my understanding is in Search Console, we don't kind of show the details of the sitemap index file. So if you submit them individually, then yes, it's the same sitemap file, and probably we've already processed that. But because of the way that the Search Console reporting works, we would be able to show you that information directly.
Okay,
so
then,
it's more a matter of so that you see the information right away rather than Google sees it. And seeing it twice is not a problem.
Okay, then it's fine. I will test it out then.
Cool.
Thanks.
All right. Joy.
Hi, John. How you doing?
Hi.
Yeah, so I have a question, maybe a quick one, regarding product reviews. We want to revamp our image guidelines, and we want to be able to distinguish ourselves in this space. So we're thinking about different ways that we can add original imagery, some more scalable than others. So I'm wondering, from Google's perspective, with vision algorithms that you may use, is it okay or enough for us to just use Photoshopped images from product that we find online, or do we need to go in and automatically update all our images to include photos from our studios?
I think the guidelines that we have for reviews, or the recommendations that we have, should really kind of be focused on kind of unique photos that you create of these products. So not kind of like artificial review photos. I don't think our systems would automatically recognize that, but it's probably something that we would look at least on a manual basis from time to time. So I don't know, just looking at the recommendations that we have with regards to reviews, it feels like it's not really in line what we're trying to do there, where we're trying to really bubble up reviews where we can tell that someone is actually testing this product in, I don't know, real life.
Okay, so you're saying best option is to just go with original studio photos from ourselves.
I think that would be ideal. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Sure. OK, let me take a break here with the recording, and I have more time for you folks with your hands raised, so we'll get to you as well. If you're watching this on YouTube, thanks for sticking around to the end. If you'd like to join us for one of these sessions in the future, I post them in the community section of the channel, usually a couple days before we do the sessions themselves. yeah, thanks for all of the questions. And hopefully, we'll see each other again in one of the future episodes. All right.